History is like a multifaceted mirror, reflecting past events but distorting them under the influence of time, culture, and human perception. Throughout the ages, people have simplified complex events, creating myths that easily fit into their consciousness and support national or cultural ideals. However, many of these myths, which we accept as common knowledge, are not based on solid facts. Today, we will delve into some of these myths to uncover what really happened. Myth 1. Vikings wore horned helmets. The image of a Viking wearing a horned helmet is so deeply ingrained in popular culture that it's hard to debunk. From Norse sagas to Hollywood movies, Vikings are always depicted with menacing horned helmets. However, archaeological evidence contradicts this myth. Not a single helmet from that era has been found with horns. This image was actually popularized by the costume designers of Richard Wagner's 19th century opera Der Ring des Nibelungen, who added horns to the helmets to emphasize the barbaric nature of the characters. In reality, Vikings wore simple iron helmets designed for protection, not intimidation. Myth 2. Burning witches in the Middle Ages. When we think of burning witches, we imagine images of bonfires where thousands of women accused of witchcraft were burned alive. But the real history of witch hunts is somewhat different. While mass persecution of witches did occur, it was not characteristic of the entire Middle Ages. In fact, the peak of witch hunts occurred between the 16th and 17th centuries. It's also interesting to note that many of the executed witches were men, and burning at the stake was not always used as a punishment. Often, witches were hanged or drowned. Myth 3. Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, went down in history for his daring crossing of the Alps with an army that included war elephants to invade Italy during the Second Punic War. The myth suggests that this operation was successful and involved large numbers of elephants. In reality, while Hannibal did use elephants, most of them died before the army descended into Italy due to harsh conditions and lack of food. Only a few animals made it to the final destination, and their role in subsequent battles was minimal. Myth 4. The Trojan horse as a military tool. The story of the Trojan horse, by which the Greeks allegedly captured Troy, is one of the most famous in world culture. But is it true that the Greeks used a giant wooden horse to infiltrate the city? Many historians believe this story is more myth than a historical fact. The Trojan horse is likely a metaphor for describing a secret operation or military trick rather than a real object. Ancient Greek poet Homer, whose Iliad and Odyssey are the primary sources of this myth, was a poet, not a historian. Therefore, this story should be viewed as a literary work rather than a reliable historical event. Myth 5. Medieval people believed the earth was flat. This myth has been around for so long that it seems impossible to refute. It is often said that before the Renaissance and Christopher Columbus's voyage, people believed the earth was flat. However, this is far from the truth. As early as ancient Greece, centuries before the Common Era, philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle argued that the earth was a sphere. Moreover, educated people in the Middle Ages, including church scholars, were well aware of the earth's spherical shape. The idea of a flat earth is more of a myth created in the 19th century to emphasize the so-called Dark Ages of the Middle Ages. Myth 6. Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake." One of the most famous historical myths is the claim that French Queen Marie Antoinette, upon hearing of her people's hunger, declared, "Let them eat cake." This phrase has become a symbol of extreme indifference and ignorance of the ruling classes. However, historians believe that this phrase was unjustly attributed to her. It first appeared in the writings of philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, written several years before Antoinette ascended to the throne. Moreover, there is no evidence that the queen ever uttered such words. It is likely that this myth was an attempt by revolutionary figures to discredit the monarchy in the eyes of the people. Myth 7. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. Another popular myth claims that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made object visible from space with the naked eye. In reality, this claim is false. While the Great Wall is indeed impressive in size, its width is only a few meters, making it virtually invisible from space without special equipment. This myth was first mentioned in Richard Halliburton's 1938 book and gained popularity after American astronaut Alan Bean stated that he could not see the wall from orbit. Moreover, even from space, the wall blends with the natural landscape, making it extremely difficult to distinguish. Myth 8. Archimedes set Roman ships on fire with mirrors. One of the most astonishing and fantastical myths associated with antiquity claims that the ancient Greek scientist Archimedes supposedly used enormous mirrors to set Roman ships on fire during the siege of Syracuse. It is said that by focusing sunlight on the ships, he managed to ignite their sails. Although the idea seems impressive, modern scientists and engineers doubt its reality. Experiments have shown that setting a ship on fire in this way is nearly impossible, especially considering the precision and weather conditions required. Most likely, this myth arose as a symbol of Archimedes' engineering genius rather than a real historical fact. Myth 9. The Legend of Lepanto, Don Quixote, was written in prison. Miguel de Cervantes, the author of the world-renowned novel Don Quixote, did indeed spend several years in prison, but the popular myth claims that he wrote his famous work while incarcerated. In reality, Don Quixote was written after Cervantes' release. His arrest and imprisonment likely influenced the overall tone and worldview that permeates the novel, but the text itself was created after his freedom. This myth perhaps arose from the desire to emphasize that creative spirit can thrive even in the harshest conditions. Myth 10. Napoleon was short. The image of Napoleon Bonaparte as a short man is so popular that the phrase Napoleon complex was coined to describe overly ambitious and aggressive people of short stature. However, historical records show that Napoleon was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, around 1.69 meters, which was quite average for a Frenchman of his time. The myth of his short stature arose from confusion in measurements. After Napoleon's death, his height was recorded in Old French inches, which were different from modern English ones. Additionally, he was often depicted next to his guards, who were significantly taller than average, further contributing to the creation of this false image. Myth 11. Stonehenge was built by Druids. Stonehenge is one of the most mysterious archaeological monuments in the world, and it is surrounded by many myths. One of the most common myths claims that this megalithic complex was built by Druids, the priests of the ancient Celts. However, modern archaeological research has shown that Stonehenge was erected several millennia before the Druids appeared. The true builders and purposes of Stonehenge remain a mystery, but it is clear that Celtic priests had nothing to do with it. The myth of the Druids arose in the 18th century, thanks to the works of antiquarians who sought a mystical connection between the ancient peoples of Britain. Myth 12. U.S. colonists made a peace treaty with Native Americans on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving in the United States is traditionally associated with the image of a peaceful feast between colonists and Native Americans. This image is deeply rooted in American culture, but the reality was far from idyllic. While there was indeed an instance in 1621 when colonists and Native Americans shared a meal, this event did not lead to lasting peace. On the contrary, relations between the colonists and the indigenous peoples of North America soon deteriorated, and the following decades were marked by brutal conflicts and violence. The myth of a peaceful feast serves more as a symbol of unity and reconciliation, but it does not reflect the complex and tragic history of interactions between European colonists and indigenous peoples. These myths remind us that historical truth is often much more complex and layered than its simple and popular interpretations. They also emphasize the importance of a critical approach to studying history, the ability to distinguish fact from fiction, and the understanding that historical memory does not always align with the real chronology of events. Debunking myths allows us to delve deeper into the past and better understand how it has shaped our present. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the mysteries and myths of history, don't forget to like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. There's much more to come. Click the bell icon so you won't miss new episodes. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.